Hello, and welcome to The Distillery. I'm your host, Harry Li Shanglun, and today we have a special guest, Jing. Welcome to The Distillery.
Hello, hi. Nice to see you
Hey,
again, Tyler.
yeah, nice to see you
Very
as
happy
well.
to be
Last
here.
time that we met was in Shanghai,
Yeah.
quite a while ago for the international Big Dota tournament.
Thought of you. Yeah, that was almost a year ago.
It was quite a while, yeah, and I
Yeah,
mean the
yeah.
Dota 2 tournament's going to come up again, but presumably it's not going to happen in person.
I guess
How
so.
have you been since then?
At first very busy, but now everything is slowed down, so not so busy. But I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I was supposed to, you know about it, go to Shanghai to prepare for exhibition about play, but because of the virus and what's going on now, it's probably cancelled, if not postponed. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That's must be very frustrating as a curator of this exhibition who put a lot of work into it.
Yeah, but I'm relatively lucky. A lot of people lost their jobs, and some museums are even closed. So this one is just postponed infinitely. And you still have a shot. Yeah. I was talking to
Fingers
a friend
crossed.
over phone yesterday. They're still based in Shanghai because right now I'm in Hong Kong. I was checking how's it going there. Recently, I saw a lot of online productivities, including like campaign or make exhibitions in video games from museums in China to I get more exposure and traffic. And I was asking this friend, she works in one of the museums, I said, why suddenly museums are so dedicated to do these things? She said, otherwise we will die. It's that easy. Yeah,
So, I
it's
mean, this is a global
strange.
conversation about museums trying to find relevance. Is there a particular flavor of that in China, do you think?
You use WeChat, right?
Yeah, I
Because
do.
every Chinese use WeChat, even if you don't want to, you're hooked to it. So museums are. This is funny. I was commissioned to write something about digital museums in the time of pandemics. At first, it seems very positive because everyone is doing something. But if you really look into it, it's a bit worrisome because at first they thought museums can be their own platforms and they would generate more traffic or visitors on the internet. But then they realize most museums realize that they don't have the necessary technology or manpower. So what they do is they have to find the third party, and the third party is mostly connected to WeChat because they have to find the most used platform, and that's it. But at the same time, they have to compete with very like millions of other users who use WeChat as an outlet channel. That doesn't mean only museums, but also like shopping malls, television stations, like musicians. So it's everyone. And now you see they push up something like an online like Zoom conversation or video of curators talking about their ongoing exhibition. And then you witness maybe 80 to 1,000 visitors, viewers per time. Normally, if you have a museum and one day you have this much this many visitors physically to visit your museum, 1,000, that's a really good number, but now it's nothing.
Right. So the metrics have all shifted. And it sounds like museums, which are supposedly this, I mean, it can be a private good, but this public good, have entered a competitive, almost capitalist online market of attention economy.
Exactly. But it's also not surprising because in real life, most Chinese museums, if they're not state owned, they are capitalist and they are built on real estate capitalism. Now it's like an online real estate capitalism. It's just they moved from shopping malls or commercial district from to WeChat. But
Hmm.
yeah,
And so, I mean, you're curating a lot of these art shows. It's not just some monolithic alien thing. It's like you're in the thick of
mm,
it. What are you curating for? given your assessment of how the art marketplace, so to speak, operates?
So initially, I was preparing for an exhibition that focused on like solely on play. You are invited, so you know the concept is really not about the game per se, but how we play it, like to re-examine the concept of play and the environment of play, the mechanism of it. The idea is to make the space in the museum more available and at hand of the visitors, not the curators or the artists only. And it was picked by one of the biggest museums in Shanghai because they believe this means more people would come and they would stay more so that they can charge the ticket without being criticized.
Right.
Yeah, but even now, like Shanghai is okay. Like there's no lockdown inside the city, and you can still go in. I heard that in maybe 1 week, if you're from a so-called safety zone, in terms of virus, you go to Shanghai, you don't even need to be quarantined for 14 days, which is the rule now. So people are on the street again. But still, there are some kind of like after PTSD or whatever, like you are scared to go to very crowded place. So that's the dilemma. You don't want to have a show, but nobody's going to. But you also want to have a show that a lot of people are coming. The problem is, even if a lot of people are coming, if there's only one case of contagion, then you become the public enemy.
Yeah, I see. So it's like this tricky balancing act. And it sounds like that's mirrored, I guess, in your curatorial desire to have art be accessible. And then like the museum's desire to charge and like have a wide audience for its own I guess economic sustainability or financial sustainability. And then we're looking at the effect of COVID-19 and saying similar, like it's counter to the desire to be accessible, but it's changing the way in which people are accessing the work. And then the museum's worried about risk as well and public image. Is that a pretty okay summary, or?
That's a pretty exact summary, yeah.
So I'm interested, I guess, in your take on the ways in which technology has been a part of the conversation around art and politics, and you know, how you thread that needle, how you walk that line.
I think, of course, it has potential, not even potential, like capability to be used. But I doubt if most of what we're seeing is a bubble. I have a perfect example is one museum did an exhibition on Animal Crossing. And I think it's the first one to do so everywhere. So you see it on every website about art, sometimes about game, but mostly art. Like how, I hope you don't watch this video, like how bold and creative they are. So to write that paper I just mentioned, I need to interview them. But somehow they don't get back to me. Luckily, I have a friend who works as a staff, like regular staff in the museum. So I asked her for the code so that I can go to that island to admire their museum. But he told me that island was very unapproachable because it was closed days after the news. The reason is first, you have to have a switch, and then you have to have at least one person to log on the switch, stay in your exhibition 24 hours a day, because it's a global museum. The other is, at most, it can only host up to 7 people at one time. So from the very beginning, this code was never public. It was invite only. And
so this museum does an exhibition in Animal Crossing, but then in order for that to actually be functional, it sounds like you're having to fight a lot of the like natural affordances or limitations of that game.
Yeah. So but news who reported this event doesn't say anything about what I just found. So if you read it, it's really great. I even had private collectors or museum people ask me to do something in the same nature for them.
It's like this is the nature of being a curator, is like something makes the news. It may not actually be good, but it makes for a good headline. And then you get asked by someone to replicate it, and you have to figure
Yeah.
out how to make it actually good.
I told them, like, if you do it, this is what you really get. But surprisingly, some of them said, that's cool, that's what I want. So
Right. So
that's
it's like
why,
it can be positive if you're actually diving into those limitations and kind of embracing them, I think. Um,
yeah.
or flipping them, thinking about like Now Play This, which is a festival of experimental game design that traditionally happens at Somerset House, but
Mm,
under the leadership of Marie Curie, or curatorship of Marie Curie this year, they did a digital session
mm.
for like they did a opening in Animal Crossing, but I think it was streamed to Twitch so that more people could access it.
Oh, I see. The other problem is days after that, Animal Crossing is banned in China.
Wait, really? Animal Crossing
Oh,
is
you didn't
banned?
know that? Yeah,
No, this is news.
I'm pretty sure, but now you make me want to check. I
No,
thought
no, no.
everyone knows
I'm
that.
sure.
Yeah.
I just haven't heard about it. So, I mean, I have a lot of questions about, I guess, the censorship of media in China. Do you know what effect it had on the museums and on people who are playing Animal Crossing?
I guess for the museums, minimum because it's a one-time thing and it's already done. But
Right.
for people who are playing it, I guess they're still playing it because they already have it, but not so much connect to the activity. You know that Switch is like stock market products now, right? Originally it's 3,000 something RMB. At one point it's like 5,000 something. It's a bit like the
So
dollar ticket we were.
Nintendo Switch as a currency that you could like play speculative futures on or something.
I think so, but I guess now it's going back thanks to the government. What happened is, so naturally people can use it to do whatever they want. Museums did an exhibition, and the Hong Kong dissidents did some kind of in-game protest with visuals. They
Yeah, I
put the
did see some of that.
yeah. So that's done for Animal Crossing.
Oh, so like that was the root cause of the game being banned,
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
in-game protests against the Chinese government. Uh,
Not against the Chinese government, but against Hong Kong government.
Against the Hong Kong government, right?
Yeah, I guess to some extent, yeah, essentially Chinese government. So it's banned. And the next day, I forgot which prime minister, but someone from Taiwan, like a politician who has a Facebook, was saying that please come to Taiwan, we can play it forever and for free in terms of political free.
Oh, I never thought that Animal Crossing would be a fulcrum or one of the battlegrounds of questions of independence and nationhood and self determination. But here we are. I guess like we're underscoring the role of arts and games in these kind of political conversations. Do you experience, as a curator and somebody
Mm.
involved heavily in art and politics and technology, a tension or a push and pull when you either curate for different contexts or have to translate your work to the different contexts, whether that's Hong Kong or mainland China?
I think all the time. For instance, I have this column. It's called Game On, so it's a game column, and it was shut off for 3 months because I guess budget. But now it's back. When we were back, it is in the mid of March. So I thought I have to do something about COVID-19. So I looked into Chinese indie games. There was a Chinese Independent Game Alliance, so it's a nonprofit institute only online. They would do game jam from time to time, and they did a game jam about the pandemic. It's called something like Add Oil. And 30 to 40 games were
Sorry, did you say Add Oil?
Add Oil, yeah.
Right. So the
Like,
cultural context here is it's a Chinese phrase, right?
I think so. I think they really want to be safe. So it's like cheering your people and country.
加油，加油.
And 加油, yeah. 游戏元气弹, so directly translating it is like gaming for positive power, something like that.
Right. So it's like it hints at it, but it doesn't outright state its political purpose.
Yes. So I saw, I guess, around 40 games on their website. It's some of them, I should say most of them, all of them are good, but some of them are really good. Like there's one, it's more like an art game. It's called String on the Highway. So it's essentially a news game. There was a driver who's from Hubei. It's the origin of the pandemic. And he left his home right before the outbreak for his own side jobs or whatever, transporting stuff on the highway. He owns a truck. But when he wanted to go back home, it's impossible because it's locked down. And also, at least then, there was inner discrimination against people from that area. People are worried that they are the disease. So he couldn't really get off anywhere. He was stuck on the highway for 7 days until he made a vlog and uploaded it, and then people kind of forgive him. That's the word. And then he's off the highway. So the game maker made a game. It's like a driving simulation. But the funny thing is, you would have a soundtrack that is like national radio station. It tells you how great everything is and don't worry. But at the same time, you are driving endlessly. And when you stop, this is the dark side. The game designer arranged ending for you where you will crash and die. It didn't happen in real life.
Right,
so
okay.
That's a good one. Yeah.
That sounds pretty bold, but also quite grim. I guess like it sounds like people are. Something I've observed, at least in my circles, is that the democratization of the tools used to make games means that more people are able to make games. And when more and more people are able to make games, you get more narratives, more stories from people that you don't ordinarily hear from, who didn't in the past have the power to tell those stories. Are we seeing the same thing in China? I'm not across the indie games movement, so to speak.
I think very much so, because they also have other games which is like what you would think of naturally, like a small person is fighting a really big virus and he wins. So it's platform action game. They have a lot of that. Or there are games where you get educated like how to wear a mask. So what happened is I thought I could do a video interview, like I'm playing a game, but I can at the same time ask the designers questions. So I contacted China Independent Game Alliance and asked them how could I get in touch with these designers, because they didn't leave any contact on the website. And the guy said, "Oh, it's really nice. Can you send me your questions to ask first, just to be sure?" And there were like 40 designer groups. Which ones in particular you want to talk to? So I picked 5 and wrote some questions down. I already censored myself. Like I don't want to write most like politically sensitive stuff to erase them. That's what I do all the time. But in the real interview, you can do whatever. Just protect your interviewees when you write about them. And one day later, he wrote back, he said, "So that's a problem. You didn't choose the most positive games. And I know what you are after, and I highly sympathize with that. But to protect ourselves and also the designers, I think maybe you can just do your own, like without the interview. You can do your own interpretation and leave us out of it." and also because I'm working for Hong Kong media, that's another like suspicious layer. And I said, aren't you also an indie maker? Why are you so against it? He said, you have to know now the control or censorship on games in China now are tightened again. So it's really self-preservation. It's nothing against you.
It feels like
And
that
then I
is.
get another.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really revealing. I'm very sympathetic to the spokesperson for this alliance who is trying to protect themselves, but also the mechanisms that create those conditions are really fascinating to see unfold in real time. Like we're seeing games, the Chinese government, the CCP is like really putting a magnifying glass on games. It feels like. And acknowledging it implicitly as a powerful piece of media that is able to change people's minds, that people are using for protest and propaganda and just personal expression, to get alliterative about it, which must be phenomenal being in that scene and seeing it all unfold, but also frustrating for you as a kind of acting as a journalist as well as a curator.
It's difficult, but then in journalism, you always say China is like a really rich mining site. You have all these stories that it itself is a story you won't find here in Hong Kong, but probably you will after a few years. I'm sure of that. So this is what's going on. I talk to people who are working in the big game companies. They're really busy. There's a lot of overtime working, but they felt lucky in a way, because otherwise if they are indie or they're in a small studio, they're already out of business. There's a one particular good online game last year. It's always in the testing period for a year, maybe more, and people really love the game. And I think right before COVID-19, it was out for 3 or 4 days. Then I guess I didn't look into it, but something like that happened to the game. So it was forced to go offline. It already generated a large fan base. People are so angry because they were there. And some of them are already level 60 or 70. Now it's nothing. But this is typical because in book publishing, you have ISBN. Anywhere else is free. Like I'm in Hong Kong, I publish books for myself or my friends under my own name. I only pay for registration fee, but in China, this is a controlled product. Only legit people or institute, not people institute, have hold of ISBN for books and games at the same time. And then you have to try really hard to get it. So you have the right to publish it.
So it looks like we're looking at two different modes of control. Do you think that is something you've seen borne out also in the response to the pandemic?
This was always there, but in times of crisis, it's always more visible. And even if the government didn't do anything, as the person who's involved, you would censor yourself just to be sure. You don't want to invest a lot of money already and then being told, sorry, you can't do it.
Right. So, I mean, it sounds like the outcome of effective control in a way, where you get a population that is self censoring or self adjudicating. Do you know, Yang? You've mentioned that you are originally from a kind of area of Xinjiang, and Xinjiang has made it into the I'm going to call it like mainstream Western media as a place of technological control, one where there's the narrative goes like, police stations and scanning areas and also the sort of thing, and people are particularly heightened to those things at the moment. I think particularly in Australia, we're experiencing great anti-Chinese sentiment, something that's in the strain of formation of nationhood. But it's certainly like it means that we're very attuned to, oh, what's happening in China at the moment? Oh, it's just like Xin Jiang all over again. Do you have any firsthand experience of what's actually happening on the ground level? Because I know that you frequently are traveling between Hong Kong and mainland China as well. I feel like maybe I think
the internet connection was. Hi.
Hey, I can still hear you. Are you
lagging.
Yeah, okay. We've got a couple seconds lag. So, but to distill my own question, I guess have you seen firsthand the ways in which technology is involved in the aspects of control across Hong Kong and mainland China?
Could you repeat again? It's like lagging in the middle of your question.
Yeah, sorry. And I should also mention that I asked this question because we talked about it beforehand, that this idea of like the different modes of control between Hong Kong and mainland China, especially in times of pandemic. Have you seen the differences there?
So the whole time I was in Hong Kong, I still am. All my families are still in mainland China, and of course a lot of my friends. I would say it's very different because from the beginning till now, you are free to go anywhere in Hong Kong, as long as you are not a confirmed or suspicious case. And people are very self-aware. At the very beginning, you see masks everywhere, and it was very expensive to get one and difficult to get one, but now it's very available everywhere. And
I feel like.
Is it okay? So if I go to a restaurant, I can only hang out with 3 people. If we have 4 or 5, if we have 5 people in total, one of us should find another table to sit in, and also a really long distance.
Oh no. Okay, you're back.
Okay. So in between the tables, the restaurant also has to make sure that there is a safety distance, which means really bad business for the restaurant. But comparatively, we're always free to go. So you assume your own responsibility, but people are very responsible for themselves. In China, it's different because the government takes on the responsibility and the control. Like my family lives in a very a very remote province. It's called Xin Jiang. Till now, there are like 30 maybe cases, including suspicious one. So not so bad, considering the size of the province is like 4 times of Germany. So it's really not a bad number. But it's still under very strict control. Like my mom hasn't been out of our building for 2 months.
Wow.
And she's really sporty. So when she's out, she's like a prisoner, released. She was so happy. But I remember in these 2 months, she was so worried. The funny thing is she would watch news about Hong Kong and she would think like, it's terrible. Like, how can you still have friends playing computer games at your home? She would yell at me. But she thinks like Xinjiang is the safest place in the world because nobody goes there, which is true to an extent. And so this is the better case. The worst case is, of course, in Hubei, Wuhan. I also have friends there. They were the first city in the world to have a lockdown, and they are experience dreadful lack of medical resources, materialistic or in terms of medical staff, and a lot of people have lost their life there. So that city is really bad. But because of the technology or internet, we can always hear voice outside of it. Yesterday I bought this book. It's called The Lockdown diary inside Wuhan. It's written by a social worker. What she did is she wasn't a writer before, but she would update. It's like small reports of what did I do today, and she was determined that she shouldn't be a dead point in a social network, not online social network, but in real life social network. So she motivated herself to go out of her home every day and try to connect with at least one person. It could be someone she knew, like her neighbor, or someone she met on the street, considering there are basically no one on the street. So there are cleaning ladies, grandfather who's lonely, who has to go get groceries, delivery guy, and she would go home and write about it. I think first she released it on her Weibo chat. It's a bit like Twitter, and she got so much attention because people are seriously want to know what's going on there. And then we would say climb out of the wall, meaning climbing out of the Great Firewall of China. And she found a Hong Kong text-to platform which called Matters, and she would just copy what she had already there. And so people who read Chinese but don't reside in China would read it. What is really efficient is a Taiwanese publisher, a fairly good one, saw all these diary entries and was really interested, so contacted her. It was really fast. The book has been out for 3 or 4 weeks already, but the city is still in lockdown. All her stories
So that's
are very
Lockdown Diaries.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a really fascinating, I guess, intersection of the personal experience of being there, but also the mechanism of like, oh, having these stories have to proliferate outside of the Great Firewall, then end up getting published by a big Taiwanese publishing company to a Hong Kong audience. Like, really interesting. I wish I had more time to chat about all these different things, but we are at the end of our session. Thank you so much for coming and chatting about technology and culture and China and Hong Kong. It's been such a pleasure to have you.
Same here. I hope I wasn't too not positive power.
No, I think we'll be fine. We've been doing great at the self-censorship. Anyway, on that note, thanks so much. This has been Jing.
Thank you.
Brilliant. You've been watching The Distillery. We have later on this evening at 6:30 p.m. Melbourne time, an interview with Ava Immedi, who is a writer and musician residing in Narm. So excited to be on this project with all these amazing people. Can't wait to keep up the conversations. Take care, everyone.